Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two of Tales from a Struggling Indie Writer, Vigilant Fury. I'm your host, Julius Freeman. I am the writer and creator of Vigilant Fury and Ghetto Dragon. Today's episode is part two of this series about the development of Vigilant Fury. And if you have not seen part one, I highly recommend you do, so that way you have context. The link is down below for you to check out if you want before you watch this video. A quick recap. In the previous video, I did mention how I had this idea for a story of a character escaping their captivity. That was the idea. It kept buzzing in my head like an annoying mosquito, like a woodpecker peckering me. To sit down and compel me to write this story. I didn't know what the story was going to be. All I knew was that I wanted to write a story of a character who escapes their captivity. And so the first iteration was the story of these pulp heroes who are captured and they fight their way to freedom and they keep dying one by one. And by the end of it, I felt like I was cheating these characters. I didn't want to kill off these characters. I actually liked them. I grew to love them, and I wanted to give them their due by saving these characters and these stories for another time. So that happened, and I had to scrap the entire story and start from scratch. And I struggled a bit to come up with the second iteration of this trope that I wanted to use. And I happened to watch a documentary on YouTube about Frank Shamrock, who is a renowned MMA fighter, and that lit a light bulb in my head, and I developed um, the story called Vigilance, was about a prospect, an MMA prospect from Los Angeles, California, who wants to make it big in MMA, but he doesn't have that killer instinct to make it big. And he happens to help a young girl who escapes her captivity from these men who are essentially pimps, upper class pimps. And he decides to help her, protects her, but then they find out where he lives, and then they in turn take him into captivity, and he fights his way out. And I pitched the idea to my wife, and who in turn pretty much told me it's kind of cliche, it's kind of overdone. She's seen it before, it's not really interesting to her. But then she mentioned, well, what if you make it into a woman? What if you make the protagonist into a female? That'd be more interesting, because it's a lot more interesting to see a true underdog story of a woman who gets kidnapped and has to fight her way out. And that's it. That's what became Vigilant Fury. Now, as I once again scrapped Vigilance and started over again, changed the protagonist from a male to a female, now it was a question of, well, what's the story going to be? And at first, I thought about keeping her as an MMA prospect, but then I felt like it wasn't working the same. It wasn't working for me anyway. I decided to do what I recommend every writer should do whenever they tackle on the subject, when it involving something like kidnapping. So that's what I did. I researched, cases of kidnapping, cases of human trafficking. Read victim reports of people women who were who survived human trafficking, and just read these horrific stories, eyewitness accounts, and firsthand accounts of these poor women who went through these horrendous situation with involving human traffickers, heartless, soulless human traffickers. Very heavy subject matter, very hard to read. As I researched and found, read all, countless stories and news stories and reports of all of this topic, that's when I realized, okay, I have an idea. And the idea was, since a lot of the times it deals with women who go on vacation in Europe, or other foreign places where they get tricked by what they call honeypots, and they get tricked and sold into human trafficking. So I thought, okay, you know what, maybe it'd be interesting if I set the story in Florida, because Miami is a big tourist spot. Because human trafficking is everywhere. It's not just in other places outside of America. It's within the United States as well. From there, I wrote the story how she was kidnapped, drugged, kidnapped, and when she wakes up inside a container, on the container ship headed straight to the Atlantic. And now she's wondering what to do. And at that point, that's when I started, writing the story of what she does, how she escapes, how she finds her way to the radio tower. And so as I developed it and I shared it with my wife, that's when she asked me, well, how is she able to do these things? And I was like, what do you mean, how is she able to do these things? Like, what makes her skilled in the fact that she's able to escape? And it went again, I was like, oh, that's a good point. So then I was like, well, she can't really be an MMA fighter because MMA fighting, they don't train you for survival. They train you to fight in the cage, right? So that's different from a real world situation like human trafficking. And so I thought about it deeply, and I watched a documentary about the Mossad. I looked up what Mossad agents do and I looked up Israeli politics, Israeli government stuff, and military, and that's when it struck me. I was like, that's who she's going to be. She's going to be a Mossad agent who the human traffickers had no clue was a Mossad agent. They thought they were just kidnapping a girl on vacation, when in fact she's actually a trained Mossad agent. The challenge then was, as I developed the story, was how is she going to escape? And that was the challenge as a writer, was figuring out, okay, I didn't want to do the same thing twice within the story. And what I mean by that is, right, I wanted to really make it plausible for the reader. I also wanted to make it exciting and thrilling for the reader. And of course, the subject matter is very heavy. It does involve human trafficking. It does involve, unfortunately, children in the story. I made sure to walk a fine line, keep everything in balance, and remind myself that what I'm writing here is a thriller, is a suspenseful action thriller. And we're constantly on the edge of our seats. So as I was writing this, I was in the edge of my own seat, trying to figure out, okay, what would be the best way for her to get through this guy, and then the second guy, and the third bad guy, the fourth bad guy, and so on and so forth. And once I got it all down, I was ready. And I put out the word on Twitter that I was looking for an artist for a one-shot book. A bunch of people responded, and I picked one, and his name was Anthony Gambino. Now, Anthony Gambino messaged me, and I looked at his stuff, and I thought, this is the right fit. And of course, what fits to a story you develop is a whole different topic for another video that I will probably produce down the line. But for now, I felt that Anthony Gambino's pencils and inks, and his, not only that, but also his eye, his artistic eye, his artistic storytelling eye, would fit perfectly with the story. We negotiated back and forth. I pitched him the story. He loved it. He agreed to draw it. It's his first official comic book project that he's actually involved in. And he and I have been working together since, and it's been a blast working with Mr. Gambino because he has contributed a lot to this project. He really has. He really provided a lot of the things I didn't even think about as I wrote the script. Unfortunately, and so as I was writing the script and writing out the action that takes place throughout the story went from 30 pages to 50 pages. And then as I kept editing the script, it went from 50 to 60. And when I did another set of edits, it went from 60 to 80. It wasn't my intention. It wasn't my intention at all. But it did irk Mr. Gambino, but he took it like a champ. And once I told him, I'm sorry, man. I know I promised you 40 pages, but after reading this over and over again and over again, I can't cut the 40 pages. It won't read well. It won't deliver well if I do. And so I told him, look, I'm going to give you the script. You read it. And if you can cut 40 pages, that things that I can't see, because when one of the downside of being a writer is that you tend to be blind. You blind yourself, right? You kind of go tunnel vision, and sometimes you get lost in your own, I guess, arrogance, for lack of a better term, and you feel like what you're writing is a masterpiece, right? And that's why it's important to have editors involved in your projects. So I gave, and I said, look, you have my permission to read this 80-page script. And if you can figure out a way to cut 40 pages and still make it work to the way we need this to work in order for this story to really hit with readers, then be my guest. So I handed off the script to him. He took about a week for him to read it. He read it over. He told me he read it over 2 or 3 times. And then he emailed me back a week and a half later. And he pretty much told me, yeah, we can't cut this down. Like, we can't. We have to commit to it. And I mean, part of me was glad, but the other part of me was a little sad because I felt bad that I essentially made him do double the work. Apologies, Anthony, if you're watching this video. But again, it goes to show that sometimes you just never know. My original intention was to write 40 pages, a 40-page one shot. But as I kept writing and as I kept, adding the scenes, it just felt right to add more pages. It just felt right. It felt natural. And that's the one thing that I always tell other aspiring writers is that you have to feel it. You can't overthink it. You have to feel the story. And that's what I did when I wrote the story. I felt it. I really did feel it. And by the end of it, when I wrote the conclusion or the climax of the story, I was in tears. I was literally in tears as I was typing because of how of where the story ended up at. And I really poured my heart and soul into this story. I really did. And I do for all my stories. But this one was really hit because, like I said, the subject matter was so heavy and it was so gratifying for me to have the hero triumph the way she did. I mean, I'm not going to say exactly how she triumphed, but once you read the story, you'll know what I'm talking about. Hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. But that's essentially what happened with the final draft of Vigilant Fury. Is it went from 40 pages to 80 pages long. And, thank God for Gambino being the trooper that he is, the professional that he is, because at any point he could have been like, you know what, man, it's not what I signed up for. I'm out. I'm out of this. You got to find somebody else because I didn't sign up for 80 pages. I signed up for 40. But he didn't. He stuck with it because he believed in the story. And that's what's most important for me when working with an artist is if the artist I'm working with believes in the story. Because if they don't believe in it, they're going to give you subpar work. They always do. It's not that malicious or anything. It's just that's just the way it goes. That's human nature. When your heart's not in it, you don't give your all. You kind of half-ass it. And since I gave my all to the story, he sensed it when he read it. And now he's given his all to draw the best damn possible story that we're going to provide the backers and readers down the line. I hope these videos are educational and insightful. And if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, because I do have more stuff like this out that I'm going to release down the line. And the next one is going to be Ghetto Dragon. I'm going to talk about the origin of Ghetto Dragon, how that came to be, because I'm going to plan on launching Ghetto Dragon soon on Kickstarter. Vigilant Fury will be available for a second chance on Indiegogo, and the link is below for you guys to check out and sign up for, because Gambino, again, being gracious as he is providing his commission time for you guys. So if you guys have any commissions, now's the time to do it, because once this campaign closes, his prices are going to shoot up. So get it while it lasts. Get it while you can, because if you don't get it now, you're going to miss the opportunity to get original commission pieces that you want drawn by Anthony Gambino at a freaking low price. So with that said, guys, you guys take care. Peace.